Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment, a podcast devoted to helping you overcome challenges in your life that prevent you from becoming the best version of yourself. Each episode features interviews with people from all walks of life about their journey of self-development and the principles they utilize to overcome their fears to achieve their desired outcome. Ready to be enlightened? Here's your host, Ken Primus.
Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, my custom is to welcome our guests because I know they're coming with a couple of things very expensive I have learned. One is time. 24 hours has been afforded to every one of us. And I have an individual, Mark, is coming to spend some of this quality time with us. And once it's spent, it's spent. And so we want to honor him for coming and sharing that with us. The other is the journey. The journey is a powerful created Mark. It gave him a couple of things that we want access to so that we can become better human spirits while we're here on this planet. What are those things? Wisdom, knowledge, insights, all of those wonderful things. We want to dance with that. Mark, welcome to Threads of Enlightenment, man.
Thank you for having me here. And I hope you're not going to ask me to dance because I'm not a good dancer.
Well, dance, Mark, is based on the interpretation of the individual. However you want to do it, that's how you do it, man. And that's considered dance. So I am not a judge. I'm not one of those judges so you think you can dance or anything like that. However you express yourself, man, that's what it's all about. One of the customs that we have here, Mark, is as I toss the first question to the individual, because as I mentioned, the life that we live, there are two journeys, the individual journey, and then there's the interdependent journey. And that's when we become servant. My question to you is, how do you serve mankind?
I am known as Mr. Productivity. And yet no one has ever come to me and said that they want to be more productive. They want to plan better. They come to me because they are overwhelmed. They are overwhelmed with their to-do list, with their calendars, with their project, with life. And so I serve humanity by helping people to get overwhelmed because you cannot live your best life if you are overwhelmed. And I want people to think just for a minute, how would you rate your feeling of overwhelm right now? Scale it. Let's go old school. A, B, C, D, F, incomplete, and give yourself a rating. If you think, hey, I got overwhelm under control, then give yourself an A. If you go, I am really overwhelmed, and give yourself maybe a D. Now, that grade doesn't mean it's going to stay there forever, and it doesn't mean you can't improve it. And if you rated yourself high like an A, it doesn't mean you can fall back to a D. So just give yourself that grade. I find it very helpful to journal about how I'm feeling, because if you don't make how you're feeling real in a journal, talking to people or whatever, then you could be lying to yourself. We call it telling ourselves stories. So I would just say, the answer to your question is I help people deal with their overwhelm.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, man. I was a Z. I was all the way back there. And I had to learn how to climb back up on that alphabet scale, man. But I tell you, I've been there. And I love how Mark had mentioned one of the very first, I guess, tools that he mentioned that you can utilize in your journey is that of journaling and keeping a record of things, because it will keep you accountable as well, and it'll make sure and check on you to make sure you're not lying too. So you can't lie to yourself. You know who you are, and so it's just a waste of time to try and lie to yourself. It's you get nowhere. Another how we move this thing, Mark, is I like to visit the spaces I tell people that we usually go to in life as we're moving to quote unquote adulthood. First place we start is the family. This is where we have a bunch of strangers. They call them mom and dad. Some of us have siblings and stuff like that. We don't know who these people are. They don't know anybody. We're just making it up. But how was your family unit like?
I was an only child. I think once my parents had me, they go, oh my goodness, he's going to be a handful. One is enough. And so I was raised by two parents. They've now since passed on, but they were actually the foundation for me to become Mr. Productivity. I didn't know there was such a thing as productivity or what I would be doing 20, 30, 40 years down the road. But my parents, I was born in 1965, and my parents raised me that you have chores to do and you got to do the chores correctly and you got to do your homework and you have to take your baths or your showers and you have to be respectful for people. That's the way I was raised. And my parents did not shed the, how should I put this politically correct? They did not shy away from exercising tough love. And if you're from my generation, you know what that means. That doesn't mean don't do that, Johnny. That means a whooping. And I don't want to go down that road on your podcast, but I think because the way I was raised by my parents set me up for the success I'm experiencing today.
I'll tell you what, man. In my culture, I'm from British Guiana. Whipping was an Olympic sport, and so they had all kinds of tryouts and stuff like that. And so I understand what you're talking about. It was some of those times that they were trying to qualify, left some marks on some of us, you know. So I understand exactly what you're talking about when you talk about there's nothing wrong with some tough love, man, because it's old school, as they say. And we didn't turn out that bad, did we, Mark?
No, we didn't. And here's the thing, a lot of people in 2025, they're all in touch with their feelings. Well, feelings are certainly a part of our body, of our being, but there's also the physical element. I mean, if a kid's going to run out in the street, you can't say, Johnny, don't run in the street. You may have to go grab him by his arm to get him from running into traffic and be hit by a car. So I think we have to avoid absolutes like don't ever hit your kid. Don't ever raise your voice to your kid. Don't ever put your kid in timeout, because I think that is limiting you. And the last thing I want to do is limit people. Every individual on our planet, every individual is unique, and everyone has to be treated uniquely. I'll give you a real life example. I grew up playing little guy soccer. The rest of the world calls it football. We call it soccer in America. And I remember I was playing on a team, and the coach is really passionate about the game. He's also very good at reading the kids. I'm the type of guy, if you yell at me, I'm shutting down. Yelling at me doesn't work. But if you explain to me, hey, A, B, and C, got it. And this was when I went in the corporate world. The good leaders, the good managers I had, they would understand that if they raised their voice to me, if they yelled at me, I would not perform. But if they would talk to me as a mature adult, it would. My point in saying that is everyone's unique. You cannot say, okay, we're going to treat everyone on our team, whether that's a corporate team or a sports team, the same, because different people like to be handled differently. And if you're a really good leader, a really good coach, you pick up on that and you treat them the way you get the maximum proficiency and performance out of them.
Yeah, I agree with you. I couldn't handle the yelling at and stuff like that. I would shut down and different things. And so I totally understand. I think it has to do with boundaries. Of course, how a family member may utilize the tool to teach us about boundaries could be a little different. Some people use a belt, some people use switches, things like that. But I think what it is trying to make the kid, you and I, aware that there's certain limits in certain things. And but I understand, people are afraid of even the limits. That's showing when in this natural realm are limits within the natural realm. But also, when you learn to tap into the spiritual realm, you can learn how to extend that and go beyond that. But again, that's from personal knowledge as you learn who you are as an individual. And you recognize that those limits are not all needed anymore because you are, quote unquote, supposed to be an adult by this time. So there is none of that, if you will, but you still need to have boundaries and limits within your relationship with yourself and others. So, there's good and bad. You and I can talk about this, and psychologists will argue with you and I about this. But like I said, it is what it is. As you growing up, Mark, and you had this foundation with mom and dad, what was your being a single individual? Because in the family, we learn a couple of things. I tell people we learn the basics of communication skills. We learn our modus operandus, if you will, the way by which we are going to move and live and walk and think and so forth. What was Mark as a young man, his relationship to others outside the family, being a single?
I had a solid group of friends that lived like a couple houses away from me, and we did everything together. We played sports together. We played things that you can't even play in 25, cowboys and Indians and cops and robbers. We used sticks as guns, and we just grew up together, elementary school, junior high, high school. We just created this bond. Sadly, after high school, people go off to various colleges around the world and you lose touch of people. But I only had a very few friends. I don't think it serves anyone to have 100, 300, 600 friends. You need to have a core, solid inner circle of friends that you can basically say anything to, and they can say anything to you. And I had that. And it was amazing how we used to literally do anything. We'd ride our bikes or go play football or basketball, whatever. And I think people need that. But you again, I want to make sure people don't miss this. You can't have too big of a circle. I remember in high school, these popular kids, everyone liked the popular kids. That's a lot of pressure on someone in ninth, 10th, 11th, or 12th grade when they are everyone looking up to them. Like, that's a lot of pressure. And that's why I wouldn't want to be Taylor Swift. I would not want that kind of pressure.
Yeah, I don't know. I like my privacy, and I've just been honored to have that. And I think it's important for strong human connections to have a tight circle from time to time, because all of us go through some dark times. I have a couple of my boys that I can talk to them about anything. And when I'm off the rockers, they'll tell me, man, what's wrong with you? And so I like that. And I have that with some friends, some both men and women that are tight, if you will. And I can at any time be myself, if you will, and not worry about being judged. And they know how crazy I can get, and I know how crazy they can get. We all are okay. So, Mark, you're heading in, you're growing up, you had your school boys, you had all of that. You're looking to college, man. What was it in college, as far as study, field of study, that got you excited, that says, I want to take this route and, pursue it and see what happened? Which school and why did you pick it?
College was an utter mess for me. I was one of those kids where I should have taken a gap year because I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I picked a community college up in New York and I went for computer programming. My heart was not in it. And I actually dropped out of that college because I was not in a place where I should have been. But I will tell you one thing that came out of that, because I believe every quote failure, there's always some hidden insights if you are willing to look for it. So I used to get to college really early because I had a really early class. And I remember there was a radio station. There was a college radio station that was only on campus. So it didn't have an antenna. It was only on campus. And so I went there, never been in radio before. And I said, hey, can I be a DJ? Now, keep in mind, when you're playing the tunes in the morning at college, ain't nobody there, ain't nobody listening to you. But it kind of got me the bug. And so I dropped out of college and pursued a career for 10 years in radio broadcasting, which later on was what got me into podcasting and speaking and training and online, all that stuff. And what's interesting is I didn't plan to get into radio. I didn't plan to, maybe someday I'll be a speaker or what's a podcast. We're talking back in 2001, 2002. But it's funny how I failed out of my first college. I do have a college degree. I went back to college later, but something lit a fire in me during that college experience. So I don't count that dropping out of college as a failure. I count it as, hey, that actually got me on the trajectory I'm in now.
Yeah, Mark, I really don't like that word failure for some reason. And I'm trying to find a good word to replace it, if you will, because none of us really fail at anything. Whatever we do, we tried, did not work out. Doesn't mean that we failed, but we learned something in there. And the fact that we learned something, I don't think we failed. We learned. If you're learning, if you didn't learn, maybe that's the case. But I think all of us learned something. But I think in life, what I think with us is it's beautiful. I love doing that history, if you will, Mark, because what it does for me, it kind of shows me when how synchronicity usually slides in, if you will, in our life as we are moving through our life and kind of starts taking us into places where we are best suited for, but we don't know because the seers or the planners, if you will, see a vision that they wanted Mark to be in a position that they want to see him. And so they have to figure out how to get this crazy man in into where we want him to be. And so I think that's how we kind of move into these places. Of all places, you went to that specific school. Of all things, they only had that radio station just for the campus. You see what I'm saying, Mark? There's some things, some planning behind that you and I don't have any idea of, but we seem to be able to be led in those places that spark things in us to awaken us to start the journey as to where we belong, if you will. So talk to me about that, Mark, when you got there, because it's kind of, for lack of a better terminology, ballsy to walk into a place and say, hey, I want to be a DJ, and you don't know anything about it. So talk to me as to what was that like, because that is a scary moment, number one, could be, but also it could be one liberating thing that happened to this young man that got him kick-started or jump-started, if you will.
To be honest with you, I cannot recall that moment when I walked into the radio station that day. I remember when I was actually behind the mic, but I don't remember what it was like when I walked into that station, because I do remember it's not like the radio stations like are all over the world now. You walk in, there wasn't like a secretary in a sales office. You open the door, you're in the studio. I mean, it was a college radio station. That's all it was. And I probably, I don't know this for sure. I probably just said, hey, how do you get to be on the radio? I had no idea. And what's funny is before that, I didn't even like speaking in front of an open room. I mean, speaking in front of an empty room, because I was afraid of making a mistake. And I would literally shake like I was having a seizure, and I would sweat if anybody's in the room. Now I have a podcast, I'm a speaker, I'm an online trainer, and it's like something's flipped. But in answer to your question is, I don't remember that day I actually walked in. I don't know if I waited 2 weeks and finally got up the courage, or if I decided, I'm just gonna walk in. I wish I had recorded that. I wasn't journaling back then, but I wish I would have recorded that feeling that when I walked in. And what's interesting is no one has ever asked me about that before. And so that's probably why it's probably back in my subconscious mind, buried under, dust and dirt and cobwebs. It's probably back there. I just can't bring it to the front of my mind right now.
Yeah, it's amazing. I believe it's stored there, Mark. It's just that you've never, like you said, no one has ever asked you to tap into it, but it's there, and you get some of the really insights of the individual when they do that. So here you are, you're at the mic. You said you remember being at the mic. Talk to me about being at the mic, man. Here, because again, you don't know anything about this thing. This is a new avenue, a new stepping out, because there's this guy who's shy. He doesn't have many people in that room. It's just him. um you gotta, as you said earlier, you gotta dance, Mark. How was it in your early days, if you will, with you, the mic, and no one there, and having to capture this audience via yourself and the music and stuff like that?
What audience?
I know
I
everyone wasn't
remember-
there, but you were there.
I remember the radio station was on the third floor of the building, and the DJ who came in the morning, if you came in after the first DJ, you didn't have to do all this stuff. You had to go in there, turn everything on. Yeah, you had to turn everything on. It wasn't 24 hours. Then you had to play a song, and then you had to run down to the first floor across the cafeteria to turn the speakers on. This is real life, folks. And then run back. So you couldn't pick a short song because it's a long way down. And I always used to play the same song. It was Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band against the wind. It was 5.5 minutes long to give me enough time to run out the studio, run down the hallway, down the stairs, across the cafeteria, turn the speakers on and run back up, and then catch my breath. And it's like, and then back then we were playing records. And for you kids listening, records, we didn't have streaming music. We had records. So when I ran back in the studio, I had to make sure I didn't bump the turntable because that would have been embarrassing. Well, I mean, again, I didn't have an audience. Nobody was there yet, but that was very interesting. But something about being on the radio, even if one person was listening to me in the cafeteria, it just lit something inside me. And it's like, wow, I'm behind the microphone, got the control board. And it's like, it was just, I remember that feeling. And then what I realized is when I went from college radio to big radio, like, oh, this is how the big boys do it. And yeah, that's a very interesting part of my life.
Yeah, talk to us about that movement, because we life is happening while we're just moving through our day to day, if you will. As life is moving, Mark, and you're heading into the big boys arena, as they say. How did you get to the big boy arena? And once you landed and you realize, hey, I'm with the Sharks, how did you make the adjustments?
My first job in radio, real radio, not college radio, but real radio, I applied. I just reached out to this radio station. Didn't know how to apply for a job at a radio station. And they said, I'll come in for an interview. I'm like, wow, this is great, man. I'm really like on fire. And they said, yeah, we're looking for someone like you. And they started telling me about the job. And the more they talked, I realized, okay, this is not going where I want it to go. So the radio station I worked for had an AM and an FM station, and they were actually on the same floor across the hallway from each other. They didn't want me for the top 40 radio station. What they wanted me for is a non-speaking board operator, which means we would do talk radio shows that were networked across the entire country, and I would just make sure the commercials played. And at first, I was kind of sad that I would not be a radio DJ on the top 40 station, but there's something called paying your dues.
Yeah.
They're not going to take somebody who's never been to radio. Now, here's a prime time morning drive slot. Go ahead. You don't know what you're doing. And I had to get familiar with the equipment. I had to get familiar with commercials, and everything's timed down to the second at radio. So there was a reason why I never got to work for that FM radio station, but I did work for another top 40 radio station in Rochester, New York, and I worked for other radio station. But you got to pay your dues. It's also known as putting in the reps. And now as I look back on that, I'm like, oh, there is a method to their madness. No DJ that you hear on any radio station woke up one day, walked in behind the microphone and started being a DJ. They had to go through the process. They had to go to small market radio stations or maybe college radio stations and get their craft honed. So when they go on the air, people are like, oh, I want to listen to this guy or girl.
Yeah. See what I'm talking about, Mark? That's synchronicity that the planners had in place. We know nothing about it because you weren't going for that position at all. You wanted the big boys. You want to hang out and do, top. But they knew that you had to be trained because they want you someplace else. The designers want you someplace else. You had to be trained. You had to become knowledgeable. You had to know your stuff. As you said, you had to put in and pay your dues. And this synchronicity is happening. And as you said, you're like, later on, you go, oh, now it makes sense. And all of it always makes sense to us in hindsight. But when we look back and realize, wait a minute, I couldn't have performed as good as I am today if I did not do that particular thing. And so life has a way, Mark, but I've been trying to tell my listeners to take a look at your life sometimes in your busyness, like Mr. Productivity is talking about. We get so overwhelmed. Sometimes you need to slow down and start looking at some threads inside you and in your life and begin to learn how to tug at those things, because they will open up some things for you regardless of how busy you are. But we have someone here who will teach you how to come from a Z of that alphabet better, performance than where I was. So here you are, Mark. Talk to me as you're moving, because again, as I said, life happens. What was happening to Mark here? Because he's doing his thing, and he's moving and moving from one to the other. How is Mark doing? I mean, check in with us. How was he doing amongst all of this stuff happening around him and being exposed to all of that stuff?
This was back in the 1980s and early 90s. No one had cell phones. There was no internet. There was no social media. And so I think I was more in touch with what's going on in my world. That's why, as I prepare to celebrate my 60th birthday this June, I'm getting back
Congrats.
to that. I get back to the, hey, let's get on a Zoom call if we're far away, or let's go out to lunch. Let's have eyeball to eyeball conversations, because so many people are in their phones. And I remember back then it was a lot of work because, we didn't have all the things we have today.
Mm-hmm.
But I think people were closer. You knew your neighbors. You
Yeah.
knew the people at church. You knew the people when you went shopping or when you went to the park or whatever. You knew them. And I think with all the technology we have, part of the problem is we don't know people as much. I can't say with 100% certainty, but I believe back then, I didn't know it at the time, but I think I was just loving life. I mean, I was a DJ. I worked for a radio station, which is pretty cool when people go, yeah, I work for, Kmart, or I work for, this is before Walmart, Kmart, or I work for Sears, and I work for a radio station. Like, oh man, that's cool. So, that's probably why my head got a little bit bigger back then, because I was so proud of being in radio. I didn't tell people I worked for a talk radio station, just played the commercial. They didn't need to know the details. I just told them that I work for a radio station. And how many people know people who work for a radio station? It's like today. If you walk into someone and they work for Spotify, you go, oh, you work for Spotify? That is so cool. They could
Yeah.
be the janitor. They don't tell you that. They just say they work for Spotify because the name Spotify is wow, or Apple, or Microsoft, or Google. If someone says that, you may ask them what they do, but you're back of your mind, you're like, that's pretty cool. So I'm thinking back then, I think I was living the life of working for a radio station.
Yeah, I think, Mark, the reason why we don't know each other because we are all drug addicts in a way. And drug addicts are incapable of having really deep relationships, meaning drug addicts to the phone. Everyone is, and we're getting data as to what all these algorithms are doing to the brain and how people are literally hooked on it. And you have millions and billions of people that are seriously drug addicts. And it is the new drug, because if you take it away from them, they behave just like if someone is hooked on any other type of drug. And so,
Or if their favorite app goes down,
yeah,
I mean, people lose their mind. I can't log on to Instagram, and they lose their minds.
yeah, it's a drug, and because of them being on a drug, we gotta tell it what it is. Because they're all drug addicts, they can't really have a honest, deep relationship. Because I've been around drug addicts with the other stuff that weren't capable, and I see the same very thing with those with the phones and stuff like that. And we're having data now coming to prove to us that is absolutely true. So as you're moving out, man, you're getting out there. Talk to me when you became a big boy, when you were with the shark now, and you're one of the sharks, and you're looking around, and here's this kid. He is a single child, had all of this, scared, being terrified of talking with people and all of this stuff, walked through all of that. He is now here with the sharks, with the big boys. He's one of those, from this little college campus, no listeners, to the big show. Talk to me when you got there, Mark, as to, I know what it'll do to you, but also things begins to change as we get into our quote unquote stuff. So talk to me when you got there and you realize, okay, I'm on top of the world right now.
Well, when I first started working for a big boy radio station, I was experiencing a mixture of excitement and an illusion. Let me elaborate. So I thought when you're a radio DJ, you could do whatever you want. Oh, unless you're a big, high paying morning drive or afternoon drive air personality or DJ, everything is scripted out. Everything. I remember there used to be these big 6x8 index cards, and it would say, okay, between these two songs, say this verbatim, play this song, stop talking this, don't talk now. And I'm like, I had no idea how scripted this thing is. And then the thing that really shocked me is I used to listen to Casey Kasem's American
I
Top
remember
40. I
him.
think everybody
Yeah.
back then did that.
Yeah.
I always thought this thing was live. When I got in the radio, it came on records. I'm
Yeah.
like, records? And so my illusion, because when you're on the other side of the radio, when
Yeah.
you're listening, you're like, oh man, that guy's so great. Me and Mark used to play this song. And I'm like, everything is scripted. And not only that, I'm going to further burst people's bubbles. If you think Washington, D.C. is political, get in the radio broadcasting. There is so much backstabbing because when the evening jock would take a vacation, oh, there would be so many people that want that coveted spot because the overnight guy wants to get in prime time.
Mhm.
It was horrendous. Now, if you're the morning drive, you're the top of the pile.
Yeah.
And the only one below you is the afternoon drive. Everyone else, backstabbing. They're trying to go behind your back to get the prime shift. And I do not miss that part about radio. It was so political. And I try to tell people, you have no idea unless you know someone or you were in radio how political it is. Now, some people may listen to this and go, oh, it's not. I've been in radio 50 years. I'm like, well, good for you. What I experienced over my 12 years, it is extremely political. It makes Washington, D.C. look calm and serene like choir people.
Yeah, everyone doesn't know. They don't know what happens behind the scenes unless you have someone. I remember interviewing this guy, a comedian, a lawyer for comedians, and he was telling me the behind the scenes stuff. And I was like, whoa, whoa, I never knew anything like that. We just went and saw the show and we were laughing. But all the lawsuits and all the different things that happen with a word, and it's just amazing, and all the crazy things that goes on there, Mark. Mark, you're again. I'm trying to get my purpose here at Threads is to let the people get to know Mark, so that when they show up at his podcast and when you show up in his space to be a coach, you get a chance. You know him, so when you show up, you're not coming there to question anything. You're coming there to get results, and so I want you guys to get to know Mark so that when you show up, you're not BSing. You're coming there seriously and say, "Hey, Mark, I heard you guys talking, and I know, I identify with you. I need help." So, Mark, talk to me about when you started your journey, if you will, of self development. Because as I said, life happens. I was I was hanging out with this guru, and she said to me, we were meditating one day, and she made a statement. She said, "Let life disturb your comfort." And I think those words jumped inside me and just started living there, occupied space. I remember when life started disturbing my comfort. I was a little upset, upset about that. That's when I went from not even an A, I would say like a D down to the Z that I was talking about. Um, and so life came in and educated me on a few things. Talk to me as far as your education in the beginnings of your journey, Mark, and what did it look like? What caused that? And how did you begin to implement that journey?
In the beginning of my journey, I was looking for shortcuts. I'm like, okay, let me just get this college thing out of the way. I was not a reader. I didn't want to listen to this is books on tape. This is how far back we go. I just like, look, just tell me what I need to do to make a lot of money. And I was immature. And
Yeah.
it took me getting fired in 2005. So I like to go from like the mid 20s right up till I got fired because I it wasn't a waste of my time, but I was just trying to please everybody else
Yeah.
from my mid-20s until I was fired around, I think I was like 45 when I was fired. And I that's what really changed my life. That's what really got me to go, okay, it's your life. You are in control of your life. So are you going to continue trying to please your mom and your dad and your coworkers and your friends and colleagues? Or are you going to do your own thing? And it took me getting fired to jolt me awake. I think I was asleep for like 25 years and
Yeah.
it jolted me awake. And I'm like, oh, then I started discovering the world out there, these things called books. And then I got into podcasts and I got into, training, video training. And I just became a dry sponge in an ocean, soaking up all this information. And so that's the beginning of my journey to where I am now.
Yeah, I tell people it takes a trauma or a traumatic situation, Mark, to unhook us, gives us the opportunity to disconnect from the default program where we get up, drink the coffee, run to work. We get into these molds, if you will, and next thing you know, it's 30, 40 years in, Mark, you know, and we've never really been disconnected. And when that happens, some people will look at it and go, wait a minute, I need to start investigating. And I tell people life is a series of decisions that we make. And then we will take the necessary steps to gain and bring the information in our life to make those major changes that we want. And so you incorporated personal development. You started listening to podcasts, reading books and stuff like that. The data, Mark, that you started accumulating and bringing into your space. For here's someone who didn't like reading and all this type of stuff. What did it started to do to you? What did all of that information began to do to Mark to help this young man or a middle-aged guy, if you will, to now start navigating to where he becomes a Mr. Productivity, where he becomes one that have a podcast, all this. What took place there, Mark? And what tools did you start to bring in?
Well, it took place is that there's no limit to what I can do. There's no limit to what anybody can do. If you truly want to change, the tools are real simple. I mean, I don't like dealing with absolutes because when I give people absolutes, I'll read this book. And if it doesn't speak to them the way it spoke to me, then they're like, well, it didn't work. So I just encourage people, first of all, don't overthink it. Overthinking there's a pandemic of overthinking in our culture today. Just start going out and reading books. If you don't have money, go to the library and just start listening to a podcast or start following people on YouTube or your favorite social media platform. Not the cute baby videos and the cute dog pics. I mean, people that can really help you. Don't overthink it. Just stop merely consuming social media because it's fun and start learning stuff. That's when I stopped taking life so seriously, like I got to do this. A plus B plus C equals D. No, stop. Just start living life. That's why the number one thing I tell people is just you're overthinking it. Just live life. I don't know what my why is. That's okay. Just live life. There are plenty of tools out there. I could list tools till like the end of the day, but I know our time is limited. Just start living. If someone says, oh man, I read this book, it really helped me. Like, oh, what's that book? Go on by and read it and then apply what it teaches you. People are so obsessed over, Mark, what tools do you use? I'm not you. You're not me. So what works for me may not work for you. You need to figure that out on your own journey. When I first got into productivity, I was giving people very absolute specific tools. And I'm like, why aren't they getting the results? Because they're not me. And that's why I love my coaching, because I'm able to figure out what works for them. So I don't want to give people absolutes, but I just want people to, it's okay to be on your digital devices. It's okay, but don't go on there just to have fun, to satisfy that dopamine hit. Go on there to learn. There's a lot of content creators on social media who are out there sharing their wealth of knowledge. And in less than 3 minutes, you can get life wisdom that'll forever change your life. So digital devices are not going away. Social media is not going away, but harness the good parts of it and see where life takes you.
Yeah, you got to, as you said, Mark, you got to want it, man. And you got to pursue the knowledge because knowledge is out there. The data, I mean, podcasts, their books. And I tell people all the time within the walls of the books are wisdom, knowledge, and insights that are laying in those pages that will change you forever. Why? Because I'm a product of one of those books. Several of those books have changed my life. Napoleon Hill, verses in the Bible. I can go to the I Ching, I can go to the Veda, books that changed and rocked my world, where I started looking, going, whoa. When I was younger, Nietzsche and these guys would just blow my brains out. And I was like, wait a minute, there's other things that I need. Walton, I can go on and on. But find stuff that is exciting to you, I tell you, go to those things. And when your inner man jumps, that's when you know you need to investigate a little deeper, because it's him who wants that information. Go find it and give it to him, and he will help you to get through your stuff. Talk to us about, because you are your first client. You said that you love working with people and stuff, but you, Mark, you are your first client. So talk to me as you beginning to take all these things. You mentioned journaling. When did you incorporate that? And what other things did you start to bring into your space now, which will give you the insight as to becoming more productive?
Before I answer that question, you scheduled this for 45 minutes and we're past that 45-minute mark now. I've got something going up at the top of the hour at the hard stop. So from your question, it's like we're going to go on for another hour and a half. And I just
Yeah.
want to know where you're going with the show.
No, just answer that and then we can close it.
Okay. I just want to be sure. Okay. I got into journaling and then I got out of journaling and then I got back into journaling and I got into journaling. And now this time it finally stuck because I was approaching it the wrong way. I mentioned earlier, I was looking for the magic bullet. I'm like, a journaling. Okay, journaling's going to solve all my problems. No, journaling's not going to solve all your problems. No tool is going to solve all your problems. But I went into that mindset and I heard someone, I believe, I don't want to say the wrong name because I'll get the name wrong. But this person told me, just journal. But what am I supposed to journal? He goes, you're overthinking it. There's that word again, overthinking. Just write. And even some days I don't journal a lot. So I have 6 prompts I do every day. In the morning, I answer 5 questions. I write out. I don't think about it. I write out and answer. What's one thing I'm grateful for? What's one thing I'm excited about? What's one virtue I want to exhibit? What's one thing I need to do? And the most painful thing is, what's one thing I'm avoiding? Those are my 5 starter morning prompts. I will write other things, but that gets my brain going. At the end of the day, I'm really big on gratitude. So author Robin Sharma suggested you write down 3 good things at the end of every day. These don't have to be big things. And this is the number one thing I see people struggle with. They're looking for, what was the big things that happened today? Well, how about a gorgeous sunrise? How about you saw a blue jay land on your lawn? We are so focused on the big things, which don't happen as often as the little things. And I'm like, count it all as joy. Everything, every blessing. Being on your show is a blessing. I went for my daily run this morning. It's a blessing. It's a very mild winter here in Houston, Texas. It's a blessing. There's so many things to be thankful for. And I think everyone needs to take the time every day, even if you're not a journaler, to write down 3 things that were good that day. And it's going to change your attitude. I've been doing this for about a month now, and it's changed my perspective. I'm sleeping better because now I'm going to bed thinking about the good things that happened today. Would you rather do that, or would you rather watch TikTok or Instagram videos until bedtime? What do you think is going to give you a better night's sleep? So I love journaling now that I don't overthink it. Sometimes I journal a lot. Sometimes I don't journal at all. But I like the fact that my journaling is my personal therapist. I don't have to pay it. It doesn't go on break. It doesn't talk back to me. But sometimes you are your best therapist.
Guys, and we're going to provide Mark's information. He has a podcast, and you need to go. He has laid out some stuff. There's a lot of wisdom there. I listened to quite a few of them, and he is a coach as well. And all of you guys that are busy and you don't have time, here's someone that can afford you and give you the tools necessary. I use that as well, Mark. I use every night before I go down, I think of 3 things. Every morning before I get out of my bed, I would be grateful for 3 things before I even move my feet and began to do my meditation and so forth.
It's so important because we live in a world of negativity, and we watch the news and we go on social media and we're like, the world's going to end. Listen, the world's going to end at some point, probably not today. And I think if more people are like you and me and focus on the good things that are happening, there's a lot of good things happening. You or I are having this great conversation on your podcast. So we're both alive. We both have voices. We both can see each other on camera. We can hear each other talk. And so I just implore people, please, in this world of negativity, spend time, like Ken just talked about, thinking about the good things to happen. Because you know what? I believe a lot more good things happen than bad things. And we need to never forget that. By the way, can I say real quickly to the audience, if you go to my website, mrproductivity.com, M-I-S-T-E-R, mrproductivity.com, you can get you can sign up for my email newsletter, but more important, you can get on a free discovery call with me. Just go to my website. It's a free gift to you. I just want to serve people because you asked me at the beginning of the show, how are you serving people? I really want to serve people. So just head on over to mrproductivity.com. Most people don't because they say, I'll get to it eventually. Do it now. If you don't do it now, you won't do it. And correct me if you think I'm misspeaking here, Ken, but if people don't take action now, the longer they wait, the less likely they're going to take action. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, because they get too busy. That's it. And once you get too busy and life happens, you will miss it, and you'll miss your day of visitation, as they say in church. Mark, thank you, man, for coming. I know you got a hard stop. Thank you so much for showing up and sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, and all the good stuff, and giving me a couple of laughs as well. And you and I are going to definitely stay in touch with each other. But I really, really appreciate you coming and being a part of our world out here at Threads of Enlightenment. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.